Call this meeting of the Kennedale Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present. This meeting has been duly called, and a notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. We may go into closed session in this meeting. If we do so, I will cite the subsection of the Open Meetings Act. Join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job. All right. Hey, Mike. We can.
Yes.
We can.
All right, good.
All right, so we've got everybody present, Leslie?
Yes.
No correspondence and no public comments. Was any public comments sent in? There's nothing on the sheet here.
No, nothing on the sheet. They were all here.
Okay. So next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. All on items underneath this heading can be approved with a single motion. Was there any calls on the consent agenda? I'll stand for motion.
I make a motion to approve all items on the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. So that information only. We've got the Tasby update.
This is the first reading of the Tasby update. It's put in here for your informational purposes only. It is a very long update. A lot of this is dealing with the House Bill 3, the carryover from House Bill 3. If you look at the update 115 local policy list, that shows you the local policies and things that we'll have to make decisions on. There are a couple items that are catch your attention. Try to find them. I'm not seeing the one that stood out. But anyway, these would be the ones that we would be closely looking at. The other ones are legal. The majority of it is legal, so there will not be a whole lot of, there's no decision making on that. The legal, that's one of the actual things that they go over. They're changing is that some of the wording for the legal, and there is no board adoption of the legal. So the vantage points will also show you the where the changes begin, or actually the key items, and then the local policy comparison packet is so you can see the verbiage change and where the changes are, what's deleted, what's being removed, and what to be considered. So, and that's basically in here for your review for this time, and then next board meeting we'll take action. All right.
Okay, any questions or comments?
The only comment I had in looking at the sections dealing with Title IX, there are going to people that have involvement with that prior to coming to the board, for example. One part of the policy states that there's a presumption of innocence on the accused person for a violation, and then it says the burden of proof is preponderance of the evidence. You know, and then, again, in my experience in the legal world, you know, if you start an even playing, preponderance of evidence works. If you have a presumption in favor of something, you have to overcome the presumption. And it made note that maybe we want to have the attorney kind of explain or clarify what that burden of proof is so that people understand that there's some elevation. It's not like a criminal trial where it's beyond a reasonable doubt, but maybe it is clear and convincing evidence, you know, something more to ensure that we comply with the policy requirements of the presumption that the accused is innocent until those facts are proven to some standard. And, you know, for those who are not in law and understand it, it might be beneficial for the administrators to understand what that means if they're the ones that are going to take these initial complaints. So I noticed that, and that would be the only area that I initially have. If nobody else is concerned, that's fine, we can move on, but I want to make sure that we do that right.
Okay. That's good. Let's make a note of that and make sure we contact them.
We have been in contact with our attorneys. We've gotten two different trainings through our two different attorneys groups, Walsh Gagos and Sarah Leone, and we've provided that to our administrators. We're doing next week another Title IX training on this, so going out to our administrators through those law groups, so
Okay.
hopefully that'll help.
Good. All right, next item is the Kennedale Education Foundation. Hey.
Hey, so the Canada Education Foundation has decided, we voted to give you funds for Google certification, level 1 and level 2. It's kind of against the way we give out grants because it's a one-time. However, since this is going to benefit all students and all faculty member of the district, we decided that for once we are going to make an exceptions and give you a check of $7,850 to provide funding for the certification for Google level 1 and 2. So if you
Great.
so would like to receive the check.
It's a very big check. Thank you.
Take a check.
Anybody?
Somebody take a
Yes.
check.
Do you want to put it up?
You want to take a picture? My mask on here.
Camera?
Yeah, while they're taking that picture, I don't know,
Will be nice, right? Always.
does everybody on the board here know Isabel? Isabel Williams, she's the new president of the Kennedale Education Foundation, so.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for volunteering.
Yeah,
Of course.
labor of love.
Smiling, why am I smiling?
Your eyes up.
Your eyes showing.
We have my smiling eyes on.
There you go.
Thank you all very much.
Great,
I
thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Isabel.
I'll also say Ms. Spencer's been working diligently with our staff on the Google Classroom. She's had a lot of trainings for them, but also working with this certification for level 1. We'll be working on level 2 starting second semester. So
Somebody,
appreciate it, thank you all very much. And our staff many of our staff have already gotten level 1 certifications already.
Thank you.
thank you.
Yes, something else to note, Drew has accepted to be the board member for the foundation. I'm leaving in November, so he's going to go ahead and step in and be the board member on the Education Foundation.
Thanks, Drew.
Thanks, Drew. Okay. State and federal regulations require that we make a motion to accept those funds, so.
I make a motion to accept the grant awarded to the Kennedale ISD in the amount of $7,850 to be used for Google Classroom certification for levels 1 and 2.
Second motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Great, thank you all so much. And bye-bye.
They're out.
All right. Next is the Student Code of Conduct.
Okay, as you know, we have the handbooks and the code of conduct. The only thing that takes board approval is the code of conduct. Dr. Drew and our principals have been working, get the code of conduct ready before the start of school. So basically, it's a non-legislative year, so there's really no major changes to the code of conduct. There are a few things like clarifying and clearing up a few issues, but I think there are only like 9 items on it that were really kind of touched on. Do you want to give a quick summary of those 9? Or?
We added a couple of things for bullying for students.
Hold on, that's good too much.
No, you may have to go to the mic. Sorry.
Michael, can't hear you.
We added a couple of things about bullying that came out as a result of HB3, and updated just a couple of things about. We added just one word to the academic integrity piece. That it's the last sentence there, or one of the last sentences. I wasn't prepared for this part. I can look at it, but the piece about just using any resources to complete assignments that aren't approved by the teacher. Those are big pieces.
Anybody have any questions on this?
No questions? No. Okay. Well, we do need a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 Student Code of Conduct.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, next is the SRO, interlocal agreement.
Okay. Now, there's a clause in the contract that says basically if both parties, if there are no changes to the agreement, that it rolls over. But it has historically, I guess, came to the board for approval, so we just brought it here. But the contract is basically still in effect. It's just a matter of whether you feel like the need to continue to approve it or not. There were no changes to it.
Okay. Any discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020-2021 SRO interlocal agreement as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. All right, bring us down to, you want to do personal matters now, or?
We can. I mean,
Okay, personal
well, I
matters.
mean, does anyone have a reason to go into closed session?
I know.
No?
Yeah, for personnel matters,
Yes.
yes, I would like to go to talk about something that happened at the high school.
Okay,
Okay, so
all
we
right,
may
this
want to
time
move back to
under,
the-
or do you want to move to the end? Let's move that to the end. Can we move that to the end, Michael, then we'll do it at the end of the meeting?
That's fine, yep, that's fine.
All right, great. So let's go down to the superintendent's report.
Okay. First thing would be, Mr. Adams had put some documents in here for budget. I give you the changes and what's gone on with the budget since our last meeting of the budget workshop. The first page, our general fund budget, we received our tax values from the appraisal district. When you look at it, the thing that really changed here is that we are about $303,000 in deficit budget, and that is anticipating additional costs with COVID-19, increases in some salaries. I'll go over a summary in just a moment. But the main thing is anticipating where we would not have to come back to you for budget amendments throughout the year. And we believe that this deficit will not be this big of a deficit. It may not even be a deficit by the time we're all said and done. But at this point in time, with the uncertainties of COVID-19 and the extra expenditures, we're just trying to play it safe at this point in time. So that's where that came from. And then on our food, child nutrition fund, the revenues and expenditures continue to match there, but these could be subject to change due to the uncertainty of COVID-19 also, especially with the lunches and the virtual learners, how many lunches we sell. She is predicting it's going to take 700 lunches per day to keep us balanced, okay, to where we don't make any money, we don't lose any money. But that could be difficult with the virtual learners being at home. So we're going to sit there and try to find ways to make that happen. Okay. And then on the interest and seeking fund, by the time we call the one bond that we're going to call, we will end up with a deficit of $29,944, but I'll give you a synopsis here in just a moment. We do not think that will be a deficit because of the interest that we will be saving off of calling the bond. So that will be a wash. And then the other sheet, the blue sheet, basically shows a comparison between last year's budget this year, the percentage changes in the funds. And those percentages are pretty balanced. So, and then I'll give you the quick synopsis here. The tax rate that we're looking at proposing on a maintenance and operation will be a 1.0547. Interest and sinking 0.2817, the same as last year. The total will be 1.3364. Last year, the maintenance operation was 1.0683. If you remember, that was 11-cent decrease because of House Bill 3. We still had to compress this year, so we compressed down basically 0.0136. cents on the tax rate. Interest and sinking stays the same, so that would bring us to an even 1.35 tax rate. And then our projected ADA going off of projections, not enrollment numbers yet because we don't have those, but projections, 2,930.93 students. And then changes since the workshop, our payroll additions, we have added 2 teachers at Kennedale Junior High School. We are looking at adding a technician. Brian, have we hired that technician yet?
We're in the process of processing the paperwork and all that stuff.
Okay, so we're working through that process, but hiring a technician for another technician for Brian's department. And then we added additional funding for substitutes and for curriculum writing for next summer, so that we can work on our curriculum the way we wanted to this summer. COVID-19 kind of got involved with that. We also have added contracted services, in guidance and counseling. We maintained the person at the high school that we added last year, the social worker, and we have also hired a full-time LSSP, which we have had a part-time person. We needed a full-time person to make that happen, so, or help us with those areas. And then supplies and materials, we've added a lot of supplies for COVID-19, and those are additional costs there. So those are some of the additional costs that are added to the deficit area. So for the general fund, the excess of proportions over the revenue, over revenue projection is $303,455. This is 1% of our current appropriations, which should be saved during this year or during the year. We don't know at this time what the savings are for the current year, but we do not project it to stay a deficit budget or as significant of a deficit budget. For the interest and sinking fund, the excess appropriations of $29,944, I call in the series of bonds for 2011. The savings from that should offset that deficit. So there's a budget kind of recap there.
Discussion?
Oh, go ahead.
Questions, discussion?
Yeah, I emailed Mr. G just about thinking ahead. I know we hired a technician, which I think is a great move, knowing all the things that are going to start happening for Brian and his department with all the Chromebooks and firewalls and whatnot. But I emailed Mr. G too. I think if there's a need, if you guys see there's a need, I would be in full support of adding an instructional technologist, at least with the secondary. I know Dr. Vu and Dr. Spencer are burning the candle at both ends trying to get all this accomplished, and I can only imagine what it's going to be like when students arrive and teachers have this plethora of fires that they're trying to put out, and they need people to help them with that. So, and then secondly, I know Dr. Spencer, I think, is starting an e-coaching thing for teachers, and right now there's not a stipend. It would be nice if, at some point in time, as we look to the future and we really want this to be maintained, having some sort of a stipend for those type of roles in the district.
So the items you listed out were what made up the 303,000, all of the extras that you...
Yes, and the additional costs. I mean, he added some more in to make sure that we don't have to come back to amendment for things, but we don't really know what the additional extra costs are going to end up being, because supplies, we don't know how long they're going to last. So the supplies are going to be a big part, the cleaning supplies, the PPE, that additional things we have to go for. But at a big portion of it, about 80, that percentage, if you go back to the blue sheet, our payroll percentage is 81.7322%. So we are at 81% on our payroll. So some of those costs, that's a slight increase from last year. So some of those costs came into there.
Well, some of those were those new positions you were
Yes.
talking about.
And we added the 5 intern positions also.
And the 5 intern
But the
positions.
changes, what he's showing us, is those are changes since our taxable values came in and where we're sitting with the payroll costs.
And you think there may be other ways? I mean, it's just odd to come in with an unbalanced budget.
Yes, I understand that, but we could make it balanced, but then we may have to come back to amendment and then dip into the fund balance at that point in time. So we were just being, I guess, overly cautious and just adopting the deficit ahead of time in anticipation of possibly being deficit. You know, we're not saying we can definitely make it, you know, balanced at this point in time, but we're anticipating not having to come back for amendments.
Okay.
Well, there was still a big component, looking at the tax office report, there's still a big component of, I guess, property still under challenge. So it, again,
We're 100 million still being challenged.
and so, again, to that number, if we start receiving some part of that, the revenue side would be up. If, I mean, a general rule of thumb is probably you get 50% or less of the challenge number. Maybe that's the wrong percentage now, but, you know, I still think that our actual tax revenue might be slightly higher, given the large number of properties still under acceptance. I remember from last year's, this is still more than last year, isn't it, Jim?
So we were running off of a collection rate of 98%. That's what we calculated on.
Right. Oh, but that's property that's not under challenge.
That's the one that are not in the challenge.
We haven't officially voted on the budget yet, right?
No, it's not.
It's the
That's
25th.
the 25th, next Tuesday.
Right, okay.
Would you feel better with an allocation of monies from reserve to balance the budget? I mean, in terms of just the balance sheet, is that what would you feel better if we said we're allocating, you know, $300,000 from the fund balance to make us in a balanced position to start? I mean, you're the accountant, I'm not, so.
No, I just didn't know if the board was comfortable walking into it with an unbalanced budget, knowing we're going to spend into the reserve. That's what we're saying we're going to do if we do this, right?
I just don't have any problem with amending the budget if we need to.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
That's my-
I'd rather have a balanced budget and amend
I'd
it.
rather, yeah, just go ahead and balance it, and then we have no problem voting to amend if you know, if it's necessary. I think that's good for our tax base and good for us to amend it as necessary.
Right, okay.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
And I know, Chad, there's
We're
going to
playing
be.
it safe, just as,
Sure.
you know,
Right.
so we didn't come back next year and say, oh, we gotta have amendment here and amendment here. We wanted you to know up front that there may be those costs. We really can't predict what COVID-19 costs are going to
And
have.
everybody understands that.
Well, I think you ought to set that stuff up as, you know, here's the budget, you know, here are the unknowns. But the budget's what we vote on.
Right.
The unknowns are, later on you can come in and say, yes, these were realized.
Right.
These things were realized. We
You've
had to have more
anticipated.
supplies than we anticipated.
Okay.
Right.
We can definitely make it balanced.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, and then, Mr. Strange had requested a update on our back to school operations. I toured all of the campuses with our CTE students with our audio visual yesterday, filming at each of our campuses, creating what school will look like when we come back, so we can get that out to our families. We sent out our commitment forms on Monday, the 17th. They're due on the 31st, Monday the 31st. The thought process is it gives our campus principals time to sit there and make schedules and know which students to plan for, which students are going to be in person learning. We started, our original calendar was August 12th, we pushed it to 26th. We set it out on the 17th. That gives parents a week of virtual learning. Dr. Boo is sending out a message next week to parents on what virtual learning would look like, kind of breaking down the components of it. We're putting what school will look like, video that will be going out. So we have those plans in place. Ms. Ravelay is working, you know, to get all the documents that are coming along. We have flow charts and everything else that are being adopted with the contact tracing. So all that is being put together. We're also putting that sheet that I showed you at the last board meeting where we have the different stages, levels. She's working on that document as well. Our roofs should be wrapping up this next week. They're working on plans to fix the parking lot at Delaney. That should be done before school starts. So that company is taking care of that. That's all part of the contract with them, the roofing company. We had 33 AC units go out last week with the massive heat that we were having. So we got most of those fixed. We still have a few that are still not functioning. But remember, we have 458 AC units district-wide, so we have a lot of AC units. But that heat spell that we had did a number on a few of them. We have already replaced, I think, 20-something already, brand, with new units. So 27 units, yeah, 22 units already. So we're working on all those. That should be ready before school gets rolling. The lock system, the keyless door entry, I found out today we got 3 schools that are already wired and ready to roll. We will be getting the ID badges to our staff next week, so we'll be ready to start functioning with the electronic door access. We're still working on getting things fine-tuned in the buildings. We had a discussion today about for the young kids getting, instead of the touchless, we're going to try to use a footstool for the sink so they can use those easier and not try to sit there and get the water working. Just things that we're fine-tuning and tweaking there. Chemicals, we keep getting the cleaning supplies and the chemicals that are coming in. A lot of it is backlogged, so we're having to wait for everything on COVID-19 is backlogged. So trying to get those orders in is proved difficult at times. We had a discussion about that. But as far as our back-to-school plan, I think we're rocking and rolling. We're in good shape. And I believe the document that Dr. Vu put in front of you tonight with the what virtual is going to look like in the teacher handbook. It's something similar, but a more condensed version will be going out to parents on what virtual learning will look like. So, any questions on any of that?
Are we good with our mask and shields for the start of school?
The student shields are in, they've been in. The teacher's mask or shields are now in also, so
Okay.
have all those.
Sounds good.
It's not a question, but more of a comment. I've only heard good things about our handout of our Chromebooks compared to Mansfield. I mean, we're a shining star. Mansfield, they were parked for hours, so I think we did a great job, and staff deserves some congratulations on that. The other comment that I would make is, again, just from the standpoint of being in the building to help my wife, when you're wearing masks, when you have shields, when you have partitions, just like in the courthouse, the air conditioning works differently. I hope you're open to the idea that perhaps making some adjustments in the classroom temperatures as things start to move along, because, I mean, even in a cool environment with a mask on or a face shield on, and if you're working in partitions like we do at courthouse, the air doesn't flow. So please I ask you to be cognizant of the fact that there may be some need to perhaps consider a slight reduction in the temperature, lowering of the temperature when it's hot, and maybe, I know they're all controlled. We got energy efficiencies going on, but I do hope we recognize those issues.
I think the building you're talking about is one that had the most issues with the AC units last week, and during all that heat spell, and when they got knocked out, and there was also an issue with the roofers. They had to pull those units off to lift them to put the curbs underneath them, and to raise the curbs for the specs. There were some issues with them not getting disconnected properly, the way, and then whenever they put them back in, they didn't automatically come back on, so it was causing some issues for our guys. So there's been a few things that are going on, but we had some excessively hot, very record temperatures.
Well,
that didn't help with that.
Well, I agree, but I'm telling you, from my experience in a public building with the same setup,
I gave a speech in that building and it was very hot that day.
so just be cognizant of it, that's all.
All right. Any other questions?
I just want to make sure I was understanding correctly. I know there was a little confusion previously for UIL and how that fits within the daily schedule, knowing that, yes, it is asynchronous, but there's going to be those synchronous one-on-one or group meetings with teachers. So I just wanted to clarify one more time how UIL activities or extracurricular activities are in the schedule.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
UIL or extracurricular, with the asynchronous and synchronous learning, how
Okay,
is?
we we are asynchronous in our accountability, our attendance accountability is what we're utilizing for our record keeping, but we are required by the TA to have some component of synchronous learning in that. So the reality is that we are going to have to sit there and run our basically regular schedule, and the high school will be on their regular schedule. The students are going to be expected to be able to be available during the synchronous learning for that purpose. So as far as athletics, the athletic periods will be run as normal, the students will be in that, but after school practices, it will be practices before school or after school as far as the actual practices themselves. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, yes, no, it does, for sure. My second question was just on attendance. I know that, of course, that's how we're getting funded, right? Big deal. So the way I read it, at least from that slide deck that TEA sent, was attendance just needs to be taken once per day, just like normal.
Why is your light on?
Can y'all hear me? You got me? Can you hear me?
Say it again. I didn't hear Michael. Can you say it again?
Who's going to answer?
Mr. Strange, can you ask your question one more time so I can hear what you're asking?
Yeah, well, just with attendance, the way on the TEA slide deck or whatever, the way I was reading it was that attendance needed to be taken once per day, just like you would do it before all this happened.
Yes.
But in here it looked like attendance was going to be taken in every single class every day. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, so if you go, do you have the handbook that's in the board book? Do you have that? So if you'll go to the
Yes, ma'am, I got that.
attendance, okay. And if you go to that part, and then there's the attendance protocol, do you see where it's linked? It's a separate document within the handbook.
I'm in it, yeah.
Okay, so if you open that and go all the way to the bottom, and this is in the, I think at this point, I think it's at 37 pages. This isn't the very lengthy TA document. So what you are citing is accurate, and that is in terms of collecting ADA, attendance is taken only one time in the same way that it is if the students are on campus. And in the same way that the students are on campus per Texas Education Code 25.092, and that's at the very bottom of that document, students are required to attend at least 90% of their classes to earn credit. So ADA and credit are two different, they fall into two different reporting categories, whether the students are learning remotely or whether they are learning on campus. And so that rule hasn't changed. So even if students select to do the remote learning option, they still have to attend 90% of their classes, or they have to be counted present for 90% of their classes.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. That explains it.
Okay, thank you.
On the first part of Michael's, were you talking about the athletic period that's like 7th period, and then there's 8th period, and then there's athletics after school?
Yeah, and not just athletics. I mean, you've got theater in the middle of the
Right.
day. I think band's in the middle of the day. And I know those are their quote-unquote classes, but I also know that usually, at least, they're out doing things. So I'm just trying to think of from the student perspective. Let's say I don't know the high school schedule, but I know band used to be like first and second period or whatever. So let's say I'm in band, I do the morning stuff, I do first period, I do second period, and then I've got to be back on my computer at home for third period. So I'm just wondering, and then theater, I think theater's in the middle of the day, or what, what I'm saying? Like there's times where, yes, so 7th period athletic, I think girls athletics is 7th period, so they've got 7th period athletics, they've got to get there, which is fine, but then they've got to get back and on their computer for 8th period within whatever that time window is. I just wanted to just make sure I was understanding that correctly.
And those are the concerns, but the reality is they have the option of coming back to school and being in school. Athletics and all these other things are choices. Those are, outside the academics that we provide. Academics is the essential things that we're here for. Athletics and everything else are choices, and those are extracurricular. So to participate in those, they have to be in person to participate in those. And if they want to participate, then, and if they want to compete, they have to show up for those practices. But we understand that, you know, it's not going to be easy for students who want to be virtual to be able to do those. You know, that's why we're encouraging our students to come back in person.
So I will say too, I've spoken with Mr. Cagle about this, and the synchronous learning opportunities, the way that they're scheduled, at the high school specifically, is Mr. Cagle talked about this in his presentation, where the synchronous opportunities are going to be done in the middle of the class period. So even if students are driving back and forth, that would be an option for them. But many of our students may find that if they have 4 electives or they have to come to campus, that it might be worth their time to just learn on campus once we move out of the initial remote learning period.
But while we're in the initial remote learning, my understanding is
They
are
are
not
able to come to
allowed on
campus.
campus
No.
at all
No.
until after school.
After we move to the place where we're offering parents choice. So at this point, we have a very small group of students in our special education program who we are allowing to come up to receive some of their services. We also are including that option for some of our students receiving dyslexia services. But those are the only students until we move out of the 4-week remote learning period who will be able to come on campus. And so maybe that was a misunderstanding with, or maybe it wasn't, but while we are in the 4-week remote learning period, we aren't having any of these students participating in the UIL activities on campus during the school day.
So if they have something during the day, they'll just wait and then come to school.
They may have
at the end of the
school
day.
practice after school or
Yeah.
before school, but they're not coming to school during the day during this 4-week period.
Okay, no back and forth during them.
When we shift to
Then
time
they
whenever
will.
parents are making the choice or families are making the choice, then the students who are involved in these UIL activities, they may want to learn remotely in their core classes and then come up for electives. Or, as I said, they may find it's just easier for them to learn in class.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up was, because yes, I do realize they have choice, but in the first 4 weeks, they do not have a choice. So my follow-up was going to be if there was an opportunity for those seventh period kids to just stay in the library or spread out in the gym, you know, whatever, just to get that first 20-minute synchronous time with their next period class.
So
I didn't know. I was just asking for
are
clarification.
you talking about during the 4 weeks of remote, or are you talking about when we move to choice?
Well, for sure, right now, I think the immediate need is the 4 weeks of remote.
But they won't be on campus during 7th period. They'll be learning at home.
There's just,
So they'll only be practicing after school or doing
Right.
activities after school.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, so does that go for the CTE practicum
That goes
classes
for
and stuff too?
every student, other than a very small group of students receiving special education services or dyslexia services.
Okay, thank you.
And then with the forms that we have in so far, we have 637 forms that have been turned in since Monday. On campus, 297. Learning at home, 345. So basically the percentage is 46-54 right now. You know, like I said, we have not put out the video of what in-person is going to look like, so we hope that we can get that out by this week or next week, the beginning of next week, which should give parents time to view that and decide, make a more informed decision.
And to speak to that piece, we've gotten a lot of questions about what remote learning is going to look like. But the fact of the matter is that remote learning in a kindergarten class is going to look very different than remote learning in a physics class in the high school. And so I am not well positioned to tell parents, this is what remote learning is going to look like, because it's going to look different. In the same way that when you go to meet the teacher night, or you have, you know, a campus open house, every classroom looks different. It depends on the course. It depends on the grade level. So I am going to provide a very general overview of just, this is remote learning, here are the details. It's going to be very similar to the information that's provided in the handbook. And then each individual campus, I've spoken with the principals and they're working on, they're all going to have a virtual meet the teacher night. They're going to have some synchronous sessions involved in that. They're going to have a time for, you know, parents to ask questions of the principals and talk to their teachers, so that they really can get a sense of what remote learning is going to look like. And then whenever they choose to fill out their commitment form, when they're committing to either on campus or remote learning, they won't have to just guess. They will actually have had the opportunity to have the experience before those forms are due. So we start school on the 26th, but Mr. G isn't asking for the forms to be submitted until the 31st. So they don't have to just wonder or take someone else's word for it. They can actually experience it. And I did put that little bit of information in the family handbook that I want to send out tomorrow.
I think that's what I've been hearing is one, you know, like what's it, not what did it look like in the spring, but that's what's in their mind anyway.
Right.
So am I gonna be now sitting on a computer, is my kid gonna be sitting on the computer all day? Are they gonna be, you know, I just keep hearing these questions, you know, and asynchronous and synchronous is not vocabulary that we're
Sure.
used to, but, you know, we're learning and we're
Sure.
going and finding. And I think that's where I keep hearing parents say, well, so every period they're gonna be on it and they have to be sitting in front of it? Or no, they have until 11:59 at the end of the day to get it done?
The answer is yes.
Yes,
So we're going to
all
have
of
a mix
it.
of synchronous and asynchronous learning. That piece is actually explained in the family handbook as well as the staff handbook that you all have a copy of. At the top, I added a part for remote learning terms because there's some things that I think we need to be on the same page about in terms of understanding what this new instructional reality is going to look like. As far as the schedule is going to look different between grade level, it just depends on the grade level, it depends on the teacher. The secondary, they have, so at the junior high, they have it where first, second, and third period, first, second, third, fourth, is going to have some synchronous opportunities Monday and Wednesday. And then fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, I may get the numbers off, but some, you know, they're dividing the day in half, are going to have synchronous opportunities on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that families can plan ahead, they can think about that, okay, I'm gonna be on the computer in the morning, Monday and Wednesday, in the afternoon, Tuesday and Thursday, or vice versa. And then on Friday, it's going to be a day of just independent asynchronous learning, independent work, so that teachers have more time for extended planning, for alignment, for collaboration, and potentially some PD. We're going to provide a professional development choice board, a menu during the time that we're in remote learning. So teachers, when students are on campus, they spend time doing things that aren't directly related to instruction. So cafeteria duty, before and after school duty, actively monitoring the hallways. So that those little bits of time over the week are going to add up. And so because we want to support the continued capacity building of our staff, we're going to have a choice board. Some of it related to the Google Suite, some of it related to other asynchronous learning activities so that teachers can choose to continue to grow professionally. While we do have a little bit more time than we might when students return face-to-face.
Good.
Anything else?
Good.
So, kind of touched on 4 areas or 3 areas there, so I think that was all my superintendent's report.
The information there. Any other questions? Okay, we have our, on board discussion, we have our next meeting on the 25th, and September 7th.
It was 7 o'clock, or do you want to bump it to 6 o'clock? It should be a fairly short meeting.
You're talking about the special meeting or the
Yes.
regular meeting?
Yeah, the proposed tax rate budget, special meeting. 7?
I'm okay
What
with
day did you
whatever.
say? What was the date?
25th.
25th? 7, Michael, is that good with you, or do you want to meet earlier? I mean, it just should be a quick meeting. Jimmy?
I published in the paper that it started at 7.
Okay, so it's been
never mind.
published as
It's
said.
in the paper already, yeah, it's posted.
It was published that way, sorry. I forgot about our notification.
Okay, so 7 o'clock, that's good. And then our regular meeting's on September 17th. And is that good with everybody?
Both are gonna be here in the media center?
It's my wife's my anniversary, but she can sit out here while we meet.
She can make eyes.
We can move it. I don't mind moving it. I'd hate for her to have to sit through one of these on her anniversary.
She
Take your
likes,
job and not
she likes coming to the meeting, she likes all the people here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I sat through one of my birthdays.
For sure.
The other item on here is the Tasby Delegate Assembly. That we can nominate a delegate to the assembly.
I think it's 2 people. It's,
Yeah, we can, a delegate and an alternate.
I didn't know if y'all were interested in going to that or not. Have y'all been to it before?
I've been, I don't have the time to go this year. I mean, I can't get work that into my schedule.
Any interest? All right, I signed it for nothing. Okay. Okay, then, I guess then we'll go into closed session now. You still need to go into closed session, Mike? Okay. So, under 074 subsection of the Open Meetings Act, we're gonna go into closed session to discuss some personnel matters. And it is 7:54. We are in, we'll come back, let's come back in 5 minutes, okay?
5 minutes.
Good. All right, we're back in open session. It's 8:41. All we have left here is, we have the information on the resignations and then information on the new hires. And there's no action on either of those.
No.
So, any discussion on any of the hires or resignations? No?
Yeah.
All right, if there's nothing else, then 8:42, we are adjourned.
You guys.
Like-
See you,
Thank you,
Mike.
Brian.
Bye,
Thanks,
Michael.
Brian, for helping out.
You're welcome.